Hello, 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 wherever you are. Welcome to our parenting webinar for today. I'm delighted to host you and welcome all of you, and especially those who are here earlier than on time. So, welcome again. On the screen. You can see our agenda. We like to start on time so that we can also end in good time. It is now 3 o'clock, and so we are kicking off our session for today. I'm going to take you through an introduction in this first 10 minutes. Then I hand it over to our speaker for the day, who is already on board. After that, we're going to have a Q&A session. So as guided on the screen, please keep your videos turned off if you would not like to appear in the recording. This session is being recorded and also being live streamed on YouTube. So if for some reason you have to go, though I hope you don't, you can always catch up on YouTube. Great to see that everybody's name is clear. Love to know where you're tuning in from. So please type in the chat to let us know where you're joining us today and that you can hear me loud and clear. We hope that you're going to be able to leave instructions, whether you're at work, at home, or somewhere in between, so that you can all gain as much as possible from today's session. So we will have Q&A. You're welcome to type in the chat at any point, but also at the very end, we'll have a Q&A session. You can type in the chat at that point or even raise your hand so that you can ask a question verbally. I can see on the chat that we have Mary, who's working at Imani Marianists in Nairobi. Esther is joining us from Kabarak University. Pamela is joining us from home, and so is Lucy. Thank you. We have Agnes in Embu and Joanne in Bomet. Yes, some of you are at work. Please take note that you're not cheating on your employer when you're attending this. Research shows that actually when a person is happy, and this is also influenced from the work from home. If you're happy from home, if things are going on okay at home, then it means that also at work you can give your best. So right now you're at work, working on home, but the two are greatly connected. So thank you for joining us. I can see there are others sharing from the other PCA, Baringo. We have others in Embu. Olive is at home, Nairobi. Roberta is in Molo at work. Michael is in Nairobi. Thank you, thank you. You can keep posting. You're all very welcome from wherever you are. And we hope that you will find today's session valuable to you. All right, so today we're looking at the topic of what air do adolescents breathe? If you have children, then you know really sometimes it feels like what air do children breathe? And we also forget that we breathed it once upon a time. It's very quick to forget what we go through. I'm your moderator, Wendy Gaya Waibaka. I work with NACADA in our Nakuru office as a senior program officer. I work with families, schools, workplaces, and communities, and I major with prevention, how to get people to not start in the first place, and for those who have started, to reduce the use of alcohol and other drugs. Thank you for joining us, Liz in Malindi and Faustin Kitui. All right, so let's listen to, I want you to introduce you to our speaker for today. His name is Steve Kiteto, and he comes to us from Badili Experience. Those of you who know Swahili, you know what that word means. It comes from Badilisha, yeah? Or is it Badilisha that comes from Badili? Yeah, which is about change. So he's a founder and team leader at Badili Experience, a facilitator, trainer, and coach. All things transformation. And he believes that that the way they do it, that transformation helps to lead to a lasting change, not change that disappears once you turn around, but change that you can continue to experience in your life. Badili Experience works with families, organizations, and all sorts of teams to help them achieve transformation through various adventures. He's the parent of children, and if you'd like to know more about what Badili does, please check out their website. They do some awesome work. So with my own acronym, Steve is big on three things, ABC. A, adventure. B is behavior change. And C is for cultural transformation. That is what he is about. And we are so happy that he's here with us on today's adventure for the next hour and a half. We all know that raising children is not easy, and it's normal to struggle with the question of how we can be a better parent. Some of us swore not to parent as we were parented, but lo and behold, we are doing exactly that. Sometimes we feel like we are stuck. We can do better, we're just not sure where to start. Yeah, and that's why we are here to help you improve your parenting skills, to remind you that you're doing a great job and that yes, there's always room for improvement. And research shows that when we improve our parenting skills or our parental skills, that can improve our relationship with our children. And not only that, but it can also help our children to develop and mature in a healthy way. I don't know which parent would not like that for their children. This is our fifth webinar. We've been doing a series of webinars on positive parenting. We've talked about tips on positive parenting that can be a game changer in our homes. We've talked about the challenge of screen time. We know that we're in the digital age. We've also spoken about how our own childhood affects our parenting in the present age. And our last webinar in the last quarter was on how to build connections that last with our children. So thank you for joining us. If you've joined us for the first time or if you're a repeat, you are very welcome. And the fact that you're coming back means that you are finding some value in our webinars, and that makes my heart glow. So welcome. And today we want to look at adolescents. Not really children, not really grown up. How do we deal with them? Is there anything we need to do different from the toddlers or preschoolers and things like that? Before we do that, I'd like to engage you in a quick poll and would appreciate your responses on the same. So on your screen, you should have two questions. Let's see what you think about them. The first question, how old is your child or your children? You select as many, of course, as apply. If you're not able to interact with the poll on your screen, you're welcome to type the response in the chat. How old is your child or your children? Are they under 5, 6 to 12, 13 to 15, 16 to 18, 19 to 24, or above 24? Yes, bado hao tunaita watoto wetu, si ndio? But then there's also the lot of you who's attending who are not, I don't know if I should call it biological parents, but you're a caregiver. At some point, you take care of children. They could be your siblings' children. You could be a grandmother, you know, or you are studying in advance of becoming a parent. Even that option is available. This also helps us get to know who we have on board today. Then the second question is not as easy. If you could change one thing about your parenting, what would it be? If you could change just one thing about your parenting, what would it be? I'm looking forward to also seeing what you type in the chat. I'll be ending the poll shortly. I'll give you another 30 seconds. All right, I am ending the poll now so I can share with you what the results are. Thank you so much for participating. You're still welcome to type in the chat, especially on the one thing that you would like to change about your parenting. I know there might be a long list. Maybe you can pick one that's at the top. Okay, so here we go. I'm now sharing the results with you, and you can see we have all ages represented, with a majority being 6 to 12. And then we also have 13 to 15. That's the next largest group. And then followed by a tie with the under 5 and 16 to 18, as well as 19 to 24 and over 24. So all the rest, we have about 6. And then there's at least 2 people who are attending as future or other caregiver. All right, thank you so much for participating in that. I believe it's now. Is it off your screens yet? I can see it's off on mine. All right, great. So, second question, let me see, I have a few things in the chat. Let's see what you have there. Pam is saying last two options. I presume she means her children are in high school and beyond, or college and beyond. Those were the last two options, 19 to 24 and above 24. Thank you, Joseph, for joining from Nairobi. Someone has DM'd me saying that the one thing that would change is not being patient. So I guess they feel they need to acquire more patience or improve their patience. You and me on the same WhatsApp group. Yes, if you feel like you don't want to type it for everybody to see, you're welcome to DM me or to DM Steve. He has joined us as Badili Experience. So you're welcome through this the whole session to use the DM or to use the general chat for everybody for any questions or musings that you might have. So at this point, I'd like to hand over to Steve. Steve, are you still here? Karibu sana.
I am here. Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Fantastic. Really excited to be here. Thank you, Wendy, for setting this up. And Nakada, I'm really honored to come and share with the audience that you've been gathering every now and then to have these types of conversations. Very important. My name has already been mentioned, Steve Kiteto. I'm married. We have 3 children. Some years back, I spent a lot of my time working with teenagers and their parents, especially those that were turning 13, 14, in a program that was still is there, Rites of Passage Experiences, ROPS. And we trained many churches, some, and organizations around the country. Some places that I had you mention, Wendy, Malindi, Baringo, and many other places. Nairobi is, of course, where it started and then spread around. That gave me a very good opportunity to interact with what the parents had been doing, at least for the first 14 years of the life of their children. In a way, it gives you an opportunity to look at a summary of what the parent has been doing or not doing, or a combination of both. And because it was very adventure based, we do camps. It would be very easy to see what the parent had been able to do just by looking at this child, say, in a camp setting. But also, it was very heavy on engaging parents on what to do with their teens or with their young people as they were growing. And because it was a transition program, we would handle both the parent and the child. And that really, gave us a good insight into what was happening all the time as life has continued to change. Many years later, about 6 years ago, I took off to start off Badili Experience together with my wife, who's also a trainer. She's not able to join me today. It's actually up to Kilimanjaro with a group up there. We are very outdoorsy people. But back to what I observed around teenagers and their parents. We spoke a lot and shared a lot and got people discussing this subject. Some of the things that we discovered at that time is, in fact, teenage, this word called teenage or adolescence is not a very old word in the English lexicon. Just about maybe 100, 150 years old. And that tells a story in itself of why do we have people called adolescents now? Years back, there was no stage called adolescence. Not very many years back. You would switch directly from childhood to responsibilities of adulthood. If I tell a bit of a story of my great-grandfather, he got married at an age that I can let you guess in your mind. Just give it a guess in your mind. Okay, some of you maybe are close, some of you are not very close. My great-grandfather got married at 15. He was married off by his parents. I bear his name, but I missed the mark by many years, by maybe another 15 years for me to have gotten married at the point I got married. And he got married to probably a lady, a girl, well, a young lady who was probably around the same age or slightly younger. And that seemed to be quite normal at their time. In fact, by 16, he was a father. And so he ended up having many children, one of whom was my grandmother. And that tells you that in just a few years, I'm talking of 1910, that's when he was born. So in just about 100 years, life has really changed. Laws have changed. Now, if you get married at 15, you're marrying a minor, or you're getting married to a minor, and even the legal implications are different. And you can see they also went ahead and had their first child almost immediately. So that the following year, he was already a father. That tells you there was no time for adolescence or teenage as a stage. And that's been studied across the board around the world. That stage never existed. It has come about, I'm just giving a bit of context before you go in. It has come about because of maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 factors. I'll just mention a few. One of them is the change in technology has really contributed to the coming of this stage called adolescence. Education is also another factor, because now when children go to school and then they have to stay on for high school, then college, that creates a bit of a lag that was not there before. And before, when you go through the education of our great grandfathers or great grandmothers, you would literally switch from child, adult, girl, woman, and you'd be taken through the rites of passage, whatever the community would prepare you for or with, so that at the end of it, you turn out on the other side well prepared for the responsibilities of adulthood. Another factor that has contributed to this coming of this term adolescence is also the economy. So all these factors work together: economy, education, technology. In the industrial age, people began working in high numbers in factories. And so people would leave one direction, they go to work, and around about the same time, also the popularity of education and going to school was rising. And so also children would go another direction. And that created a bit of a lag between the time you move from childhood into adulthood. There was another phase in between there. And the psychologists studied it and discovered, hey, there's an age here where you're not really a child and you're not really an adult. And because of all these responsibilities of education, the economy, at what point are you earning, or at what point are you a productive member of society, brought about this lag. And so the argument has been that it's just a delayed entry into adulthood. Then in between there is what you call adolescence. It's stuff that you know, but maybe just reminding you or giving you a bit of a history. And then I'll go deep now into what are we observing in adolescence and what can we do as parents. My goal today is hopefully to equip you to feel confident to be able to manage the changes that you're probably seeing in your young person as they grow in your house. And so that's what I'll be aiming at. And I'll also aim at giving you a few tools that you can do. I like being practical. A few tools that will help you just do life differently. And so I'll be asking us to just change a bit, just to change a few things that we do. At Badili Experience, we really believe in positive change. I like the fact that positive parenting. That's a bigger banner where we're coming in to speak into this space. So I'll just share a little bit about Badili, a bit about how we approach. Then I'll be inviting you very shortly to tell me, because I like this to be a conversation, what changes you have seen or what concerns you so much that you want us to address in this conversation. I can go very wide, but I like being pointed. Just address your pain point, because the reason that you have put your work aside for just these few minutes we'll be together is probably there's something that you want to take out of here. And so I would want to, you can drop it on the chat as we go along. That would really help me to begin already answering. Sometimes I like saying that I like starting with the climax. There's a community in Kenya that is said to sing songs starting with the climax. I'll let you figure that out, which community that is. My wife comes from that community. And so I like starting my sessions with the climax, which is instead of waiting for the Q&A to come later, you can actually begin dropping your questions immediately so that I can begin speaking into them and we can have a good conversation around it. I'm trying to share my screen. You can help me know if my screen is up. Sharon, am I good?
Yeah. Can everyone, can the rest of you see my screen? Yes. Could you make it
You can put it in presentation mode.
It is already on presentation mode on my side. Are you able to see? I've just changed.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Yeah, so you can click start slideshow.
All right. Yeah, it's a slideshow, so you're able to see. So just a brief about Badili. Yes, it is about lasting change. We have programs or experiences around an individual. At 30, there's a transition program that we run. And around 40, there's also a program that we run that you can look up on our website. The family programs is Kizazi Kipya. I saw quite a number of parents who are below 5. It's designed for 0 to 9, 0 to 12 children around that age, parents of children of that age. And then we followed it up with AIR, which I'll be sharing some thoughts around it, mostly for the preteen age and into teenage, which I also saw quite a number of you have children in that age category. We also have programs for couples that we run mostly in partnership with churches, but also if couples come together, we're able to run. Then also very big on organizational culture, where we run a lot of leadership and team programs and organizational development. Now, when you look at our changes, which I was already mentioning to you about my great-grandfather, lived in a village. Then the missionaries came and modernity and everything that we know. Now we're living 1, 2, 3 generations in the city. Our children, a lot of them, are growing in a very quickly urbanizing country. I noticed most of us come from just different parts and which are also urbanizing very quickly. But I remember reading the Vision 2030 some years back, and was saying by around 2030, 60% of Kenya will be in urban areas. But that was looking at geography and physical structures. Now there's something else that is coming, which Wendy, I had you mention that you dealt with the screens. If you go to the third picture on your right, you will see that we have fast pedaled, depending on wherever you are, into a digital space. And so we are having to raise children in a very sort of mixed space. We are in the city, in the December, everybody disappears, goes back to the village. The villages have also become quite modern. Like I take my children back home and they're watching DSTV. For some, it's proper, shags, and it's like several years back. But our country is in a constant change. In fact, the entire continent. But the digital space is really fast pedaling. When you just look at how many people are having phones, and this impacts some of the habits that we see we're having to deal with the young people. And I believe, as I'll be listening to you, maybe some of it will come from here. I I want maybe just before I proceed to pause and ask us to share one thing that you have noticed that has been a big change in your preteen that you'd want me to speak into that would be beneficial to you. So if you could just type on the chat one thing that you would want me to address, then that would really be helpful. I can see a couple of different, I'll just sample a few, I'll put them just in my mind so that I can them. So let me just sample a few and then we'll proceed. And by the way, thank you so much for just sharing that. It's very important for me to know. So teenage relationships is a big thing. How to deal with the mood swings, laziness, lack of sense of direction, lack of, I'm sure many people identify with this. And overcoming peer pressure, all right? I can see media addiction. Again, yeah, this is becoming quite the problem in our space, and I'll be speaking about that shortly. Video games, are they negative influences or are they harmful? Okay, I'll be able to speak about that, although I'm sure it was handled during handling the screen time, but I can chime into that. The idea of challenging authority, dealing with their boldness, and they fear nothing, and they challenge everything. Is coding recommended for a 13-year-old? The teen are so tech savvy. How can parents be a step ahead? Some appear to not to have shame or remorse or even aware of the wrongdoing. Okay, very interesting generation that we are raising. Effects of true media on the growth and development of children. Okay. Right. Great. If you have more, please continue to share. A single mom of 10-year-old boy, when do you recommend to speak about sex? As the world is moving fast. Too much media content, a lot of them seem to be around media, sexuality, and authority, and they're also changing quite fast. Great. I think these are good for starters. I'll still ask more questions. A sense of freedom with transitioning to college. Okay, that's on the other spectrum of guys who are going to college. Thank you so much for just giving me that sort of fodder. It will help me angle my conversation so that it's helpful to you, because that's my desire to be of help in some ways. Like as I mentioned, I dealt a lot with young people and their parents in my younger working years. Little did I know that I'd be served the same plate several years later. I have two teenagers in the house, and a younger one who is 8, who's also just about into the preteen window. And so I'll be sharing both from what I'm learning, what I have been teaching, what I have practiced, and hopefully even what is backfiring, and so we can all help each other. All to say that we are in this together, we are figuring it out. When you look at these 3 pictures on your screen, that transition is serious. Moving from the village to the city to the digital space, all in maybe very few years, and it's a steep learning curve, but we are all will be good when we talk about this. And so again, thank you, Nakada. Thank you, Wendy, for setting this up.
You're welcome. Sorry to interrupt you, Steve. Are
Yeah.
you able to click on slideshow to start the slideshow? Because the one you're talking about, the change slide, we're not seeing it on the screen.
All
We're
right.
seeing it on the side.
All right. Is that What I'll do is I'll stop sharing and then I will try and share again.
No, it's okay. Now, if you move to bottom right, that one, yes, next to 73. To the left, Kidoko.
Yeah, this one.
Click on that.
Yeah, that I was there. Has it come up?
No.
You able to see?
It's still the same. You can also try on the menu, slideshow, and then click start. If that doesn't work, we keep going.
Stop sharing. Let me just try and load it up again.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. So I've just been giving you stories here and
We've been listening.
all right, let me see. Just give you a moment.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you.
All right. And let me just try and see if my slides are moving. My slides are still down, not moving. Okay.
Okay, there we are.
All right. So I initially thought I had shared about Badili. This is the change I'm talking about. Now the change is happening both, if you look at our years as they are progressing, but also our children are changing. I like thinking of it as our children are also changing, and I'll be sharing a few tips around how to deal with even the things that we've just raised. But just to paint a quick background, so that we are on the same page, I'm not sure whether at the bottom you're able to see what is there in this tree of mine, but at the roots, there is what I'm calling ideology, which our children and ourselves feed in. And that ideology could be built on truth or lies. It's never, there's no other way of looking at it. And so when you build on truth, the fruit then is good. If it's a lie, even this tree will not be looking as green as it is looking in your screen. It will be a very withered kind of tree. And so we want to look at what our children feed on and ourselves in terms of what we wrap our convictions around, in terms of the truth or the lie, because that becomes what we normally like calling our belief system. If you look at just at the bottom of the root system there, we love using the word values a lot, but values are never built just up in the air. They are grounded on whatever belief system you have come to embrace, whether you're aware of it, whether it is structured or an amorphous type of sort of belief system. But when you have a good grounded belief system, it produces certain kind of fruit, because what it does, the values will help you make choices, and those choices will have consequences, which is what we call behavior. Then when we see you behaving in a certain way, when you see young people or even adults behaving a certain way, it is because of what they believe. So I just want to mention this. We'll be coming back to it at some point, but this forms the foundation of everything we do in Badili. I like what Wendy you said. I really like your summary. In fact, I think I might adopt it. The B is the behavior change, and then the culture change, the culture transformation. So in culture transformation, we like thinking of working on your belief system so that you end up with the right values, make the right choices so that the consequences will be good. The converse is also true. You don't make the right decisions. Maybe you're built on vices, not values or virtues. And maybe you're built on lies, which means then that lie will bring about a consequence that will be a bad fruit or maybe no fruit at all. And so just have this at the back of my mind without calling it belief behavior model. It's just a model that we really like working with. But let me go now straight into answering some of the questions, maybe using this framework here. Your child, for the X percentage, I can't remember, who are below 5, is born, and you are in complete control. These 4 different seasons or phases or styles, they feed into each other, and all of them will be in operation at any point. But there's one that is predominant. The first one is when the child is born until maybe about 2 years. At this stage, the child is very dependent on you. They're dependent on you for their milk, their food as they grow older, what time they sleep, what they wear. You're making decisions for them. You're in very high control over them. And it is needed, and it is designed that way so that the child is safe. And they're really dependent on you, and there's a lot that you need to do to make sure that
we lost you. Am I the only one who lost Steve?
No, we can't.
No,
I can't
me
hear.
too.
Yes, Steve,
Yeah.
now from my end.
No, we can't
Okay.
hear you.
3 to 8. You're telling them what to do. You're telling them dress this way. You're telling them, I don't like what you're dressing. Dress this other way. Those shoes are chikoleko. You put the right one to the left foot and the left to the right. You're telling them, no. I know you want to have your own to dress yourself, but your trouser is the other way around. And so you're issuing a lot of commands. Take this glass, take it to the kitchen. Bring me that remote control. And they're just responding to your commands. Of course, they're asking a lot of questions, but in many ways, you're giving a lot of commands and you still have a lot of control. So the two are working in tandem. Then you come to this stage where they're beginning to turn 9 upwards. It can start from as early as 7. Somebody in the chat talked about now they're beginning to seem like they're pushing back, or they're beginning to seem like they're rebelling. Because now, that glass that you had sent when they were 3, take this glass to the kitchen. I know I experienced it myself, where I told my daughter, take these things to the kitchen. And around 8, 9, I noticed I went to the room, I came back, and I found the glasses were still on the table. And so I was like, didn't I just tell you to take these dishes to the kitchen? And they're like, yes, Dad, I had. I was just finishing my game, and then I will take them. Now, because I was operating on command mode, I was taken aback. I expect you to just obey the command and act swiftly. But they're like, no, I heard you. But I'll do it when I have time to do it. Which means now as a parent, I'm beginning to be challenged, or I can feel challenged in my authority. But you know what has happened? The child is actually growing. They're beginning cognitively to process things a bit on a higher level. And they're beginning to not question the authority. They're just thinking, I was just finishing reading my book. I was finishing watching something on. Now, see me in Tapeleka. After once I'm done, I'll do. I don't know whether you've experienced that or anything close to this, where they are beginning to have a different take to the instruction that you have given them. In fact, some of them is where they begin saying, because now the parents begin raising their voice and really stamping their authority, they begin feeling like their voice is getting drowned, the children now, because the parents don't listen. They're in command mode, and they are, the commanders in chief shouting a lot, just to get the children to comply. But this is where we get instruction to pivot in our parenting style and begin adopting the coaching model. which is what I want to share with you today. And just to let you know that this is not unusual. It has happened over many years. There's a narrative that we use for those of us who are Christians, and it is good for anyone, even if you're a Muslim. It is a story that was written as calculating, it's about 1,960 years ago, of a young boy. In fact, it was this family that had left for a ceremony that they would do frequently as a family and in that culture. You know, as I told you, I like culture. So I like looking at things from a cultural perspective and what are these things that people are always doing. So this family takes off. It's a whole day plus journey. There are no cars, no bicycles, maybe a few donkeys, but most people just walk. And they do this pilgrimage where they go to where the entire community gathers every year. It's a bit like this, or the Muslims call it the Hajj, where they go to Mecca. So something like that, where you pay pilgrimage every year. So this Jewish family takes off and ends up at the temple, and they have different ceremonies. Their son is 12. In fact, you know, as they journey along, there's other family members. And so there's a sense of community as they travel. At the end of the ceremony, where they had gone in Jerusalem, the family begins traveling back to their villages after having that celebration and having all the, you know, the fanfare that they had had there and the religious ceremonies that they had conducted and just been part of. One day in, into walking back, they realized, oops, our teenager, our preteen, is 12, is not with us. So what do? Let's look amongst, maybe he's with his cousins on that side. Let's look at the other family members in the community if he's with them. And they realize he's not there. So it means it's a whole journey back. One day, mom and dad. The dad himself is not even a biological father, but he's taken full responsibility of a father. And the mom is very frantic. Now, what will happen to my son? As moms always are very frantic. When they finally come back to the temple, they found this boy, 12 years old, having a conversation with the teachers. These were like the professors of the day, the teachers who are in the temple who teach religious, and that was the education of the time. But strange enough, they find him seated, asking questions and listening. And the text, I'll show you the text a bit later, it's just in the slides here, says that the teachers were astonished at how much this boy knew at 12 and how much, you know, the answers he was giving to the questions they were asking and also the questions that he was asking. Meaning, just for us to take quick instruction here, it is very good for us as parents of preteens, teenagers, even young adults, and even the younger ones, to grow in this coaching style of asking questions and listening. A lot of the feedback we get from a lot of young people, when you ask them, the number one thing they complain the most is our parents don't listen. Then you talk to parents, you ask them, what is the one thing? And now again, they don't listen, comes up. So it's like everybody's accusing the other of, you're not listening. And so I think it's instructive. The teachers there at the temple maybe really got it. They knew how to engage this young mind, asking and listening. In fact, after that, the mom asks a question, and the question she asks her son, like, mbona unatufanya hivi? Why did you do this to us? That is the question she asked. And the boy said, I mean, why were you looking for me? Doesn't that sound like our preteens, our teenagers? why were you looking for me? Didn't you know that, you know, I had to be at my father's house? He meant his father in heaven. And that in itself will talk a lot about his identity, just knowing that he belonged to his father. And so it's very important for young people to be very clear that I belong here, because that gives them an identity. And I'll be talking about in terms of what affirms them. It is this engagement in conversations and asking them and listening to them. I'll be unpacking that, or alpha. But also, they need to be at a place where they can say, this is who I belong to, because that gives them a very strong identity and it sets them very well for responsibilities. I have just spelled air. Air means what young people need is affirmation, identity, and responsibility. So if you do the work of affirmation very well, so that they understand that they are well accepted, they belong, then their identity will also be very strong in terms of identifying with you as the parent. Short of that, my wife is doing right now marriage and family therapy masters. And one of the big things that they've been learning is this word attachment. That a young person, if they haven't attached well, and that stage of 1 to 2 is very important for attachment. In fact, you'll notice that around 9 months to about a year, even the child begins refusing other people, and they want to they identify with their parents more. And if you try and hold a child of about 9, 10 months, and most people don't understand what's going on, they will actually refuse you because they want to identify with the parents, because those are the people now. And that is the time for that attachment formation. And it continues on, it carries on and stays with the child. And so if you do the work of building their attachment very well, then they are very likely to be well affirmed and find their identity secure. Short of that, they will begin looking for it in peers. They will begin looking at it for affirmation, maybe online. That's why you find the online consumption is very high, because that's where they're getting the clicks, the likes, the comments, and they sort of take that to mean these people are affirming me. And so on a balance, if the world out there is affirming your child more, they will tend to attach more with the world out there, wherever it is, whether that person is on the screen or people through the screens or peers or school or wherever else. So again, straight up, I would say what the adolescents need is to be affirmed, and then the identity will grow because of that sense of belonging. Then now it will be easy for you to give them responsibilities. So that's around the coaching style. I'll mention briefly the consultancy bit. When your child is 20 plus, for those of you who are saying, you know, you clicked and said, you know, my children are 20 plus or 19 plus, you can only be a consultant for them. A consultant gives expert advice. They will tell you, I think you need to vote for this party or this president, or they'll give you their opinion, their expert opinion, because they've lived in this world for longer. They've traveled the journey that you're traveling. But the person who is being consulted for has the choice to pick that advice or not. And sometimes even when they begin to make choices for spouses and what have you, you can have your opinion as a parent. Yeah, this is who I want you to marry from this community. Wow, you have ideas and you have opinions. But it's very likely your child will tell you, yes, thank you, mom, thank you, dad. But this is the choice I have made. Thank you for your consultancy. Or sometimes the consultancy, the advice is really good, and you can work, maybe it's investments or whatever it is. That's as far as consultancy is concerned. But you still have an influence, you still have some level of authority around the child, but it keeps waning as you go along. But on this coaching one, I want to drill a bit deeper into it. and talk about this quick model here, which is called O Alpha. I use it a lot for management training when I'm training and coaching executives or coaching managers to coach their teams. So actually, that's where I got it from. But I find it very applicable in parenting as well. So what you have to do is to observe a lot. So when you are making your observation, you're looking at everything that your young person is going through. You're also paying attention to what they are experiencing, whether it's at school or through the media. Those who mentioned that your children are screens addicted, what you want to do to start off with is to begin even learning what is it that is addicting them, because it's not the screen, it's not the device. There's something they're interacting with that is really capturing their minds in a way that they end up having this, what you're now calling addiction. And there is real addiction because you're feeding the mind with something that is fun, and dopamine levels, the feel good hormones in our bodies kick in, and it becomes an addiction because you're always wanting to fire up that place where the chemicals are released in your body so that you can feel good about yourself, about, and so you really want to observe and pay attention to what does this child know, what are they experiencing, and you can only process this through conversation. And it's not a confrontational conversation. You have to ask questions. You'll do what the teachers in the temple were doing with this boy, that 12-year-old. His name is Jesus, by the way, where he was asking them questions and he was listening to their questions and answering. So it means you have to learn how to ask open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are kind of questions that leave you room to answer the way you would want. A wide questions. What did you learn today is an open-ended question. But if you ask, did you learn the right things today? It's only a yes or a no. So, but if you ask it openly, how was your day? Tell me a bit about, what was happening today in school. And you're basically saying you're open to hear. And then you process them, which means you have to create time to ask and then listen, then feedback. And in that process of ask, listen, feedback, that's conversation. That's conversation. Then hopefully within there, you're able to get space to now cancel them or to tell them, the things that you're watching on screen, this is the potential effect, because now you begin to reason with them. And for that reason, I feel it's going to affect your schoolwork. I have observed that this and this happens. So what do you think you can do about it? And they say, I can try, but you and I know, children or preteens, their brain is not yet at a very good level of high level decision making and making good judgments. In fact, the psychologists say your brain fully develops by age 25, which means in between that preteen up to 25, you're making quite some irrational decisions. So for the people with screens, what I would advise as a parent is to take back your authority. It's very likely you're the one who bought them that device. Have a conversation to say, you know what, I'm now clawing back. You only access it over the weekend and maybe just this 1 hour or 2 hours in the weekend for you to interact with whatever it is that you're interacting. But be sure when you do that, there will be, if they're addicted, as somebody commented here, there will be withdrawal symptoms, very serious ones. And so you may need to also be prepared for that. It will take a while. The child will be moody. They'll push back for a while. But then after a period, I can't tell you how long, depends on how long they have been very sort of addicted to this device, then you should be able to begin having a child. But be ready for very, very emotions that will oscillate up and down, because they'll be angry that they're being denied something. But also be prepared to give them an alternative, what that alternative will be. But all this needs to be processed in a conversation. But as a coach, you have to take your authority, because it's going to destroy their relational ability, their academics most likely, and even just what they're able to do. So what I would say is, if it's already, especially for technology, because a number of questions were asked around that, if whatever content that's being consumed is not feeding productivity. Productivity is where I watch something and I actually become productive at doing something. Maybe I watch a football game and I go and play the football. That's productivity. But if I'm consuming somebody else's production, then I'm becoming more passive and passive. That doesn't develop my other areas of development, whether it's the motor skills or whether it's the psychomotor skills. And so you really have to take charge of that scenario and just remember you're the authority. That child is under your care. They will thank you later. They will not thank you now. They will thank you later for saving them from just the devices. Another question that was asked, I think, is it okay for a 13-year-old to code? I would say it is okay, for as long as that coding is controlled. It is not taking up the entire time. It's not the only thing that they're doing. It is given the right kind of control. As a matter of fact, people like Bill Gates, we normally catch their story in that they dropped out of campus. But when you read the story backwards, the parents had begun introducing them to computers at a very, and so that gave him the practice. So by high school, he was already being hired to actually write code for some of these companies. Before now, by campus, it was already obvious that I've invested so much in this. I think I might just rather start my own thing. And so I'd say yes, but if the coding is towards productivity, with technology, I always say just check it against, is it consumptive and therefore passive, or is it sort of productive and sparring creativity and productivity? If it is doing that, meaning that if they're watching something that they're watching somebody playing drums and then they play drums, they're watching somebody making music, they make music, they're watching somebody baking, then they bake, or somebody knitting. My daughters love doing that. I allow them to have screen time, but then they will look at knitting or something like that, then they will go and actually knit. So that is creativity. You're using technology for good. And so again, back to our model, I was just trying to answer some of these questions along the way. You cannot process it in a cold fashion way, or especially if they're already in preteens, don't use the command style where you're just issuing instructions. There is a place for that, but in this one, you have to talk, but be firm in your decision and hopefully agree. And then again, observe again. And then, so it means you're very involved. This process, you cannot do it without being deeply involved in it. And so I want to pause there. I think I've said a couple of things. We have half an hour where I want to just interact with you with the questions that you have. But to say that what our young people need, they need affirmation, which is processed through that you keep observing, you keep asking questions, you listen. And in there, because you're observing, you can see, oh, you're good at this. You affirm it. You are good at, you did really well. They need to hear that consistently, because that builds their identity. Then they can take up responsibilities in a very easy way. Now, let me just share 1, 2, 3 texts that will demonstrate how this, even God the Father in heaven, used that for his own son, which we can mirror and learn from. At the point when Jesus, who I gave you the story of him learning about and sharing about his identity at 12, at 30, he was just about to go into a very big responsibility of the reason he had come on earth, to sort of transform the world, transform us as human beings. And so at that point, he went through another rites of passage, which was baptism by John the Baptist. At the point where he was being baptized, there was a voice that came from heaven that said, "This is my beloved son." That article of possession, my beloved son, gave him this sense of belonging, you're mine, with whom I'm well pleased. That is affirmation. I'm pleased with you. And so when you just look at that, it is at that point, then he went into the wilderness, spent 40 days, and then came back to now complete the work of transformation. It's almost like he's now being ushered into greater responsibilities. At the same time, this second verse, which sounds the same way, this same Jesus, because he had a team that he was working with, the disciples. He takes three of them, he goes up the mountain, and he's contemplating that soon he's going to be crucified. And so he takes along his friends, these three guys who are part of his team. And apparently, he was still speaking when a bright cloud overshadowed them, these three guys, and Jesus being part of it. And a voice from the cloud said, "This is my beloved son, with whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him." So again, it was a point of affirmation again, because ahead was going to be another big responsibility, carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. And I feel the same thing with our preteens and teenagers and even young adults, because we have an audience of young adults, parents of young adults here. These ages are very critical of entering preteen, teenager. They need to hear constantly that they are loved, they are appreciated, they are noticed, and that you actually are proud of them. That goes towards affirmation. When you do that, the identity formation is cemented because they know that they're well anchored. Short of that, as I said, they will look for that identity elsewhere, which can become quite disastrous. The story I had shared a bit earlier was from this text over here, that he was 12 years old. The places that I've put on bold. He was found sitting and listening to the teachers, asking them questions. So again, when you're thinking about this conversational style, that's how you need to engage a young person. And and it says about understanding and also his answers. They were quite astounding. The mom also asked the same question. So why have you treated us so? He was asking a question, and he posited back, why, why were you looking for me? Just like most teenagers, they are reasoning, and they are saying, "Did you not know that I must be in my father's house?" So it's very big on who he belonged to. So I guess the challenge is your child proud to say, I belong to my people. We are the Kitettos. And as Kitettos, this is what we do. And this coming from the place of feeling very well affirmed, as a young person, in a way that you're actually able to just be proud of where you're coming from. Sometimes when we talk to young people and we engage them, they're not proud. And they don't even want to talk about home, because home is a place of being criticized, is a place of feeling everything you're being asked is, you didn't do this, and you didn't do this, and you didn't do that. Now, granted, that is probably how we were raised, because, and by the way, with good intentions. It was meant to make you sort of just get jolted to good behavior. But now you are having to compete with those guys who are giving your children likes, the clicks, the comments, those who have phones. They go to school and they are celebrated by their peers, maybe by the teachers. Any human being, where you are affirmed, that is where you're likely to incline. So I think it is, how do you change yourself as a parent your attitude towards your child, even when you're angry and they're driving you up the wall, to be calm, because they actually expect you to still be the authority that they can fall back on. In fact, they find a lot of stability when you are also a stabilizing factor. A stabilizing factor is where you're not angry all the time and you're not also pushing back. Now, I must say, for most people who have parents who have preteens, probably you're also in your 30s, late 30s, maybe early 40s. And so you're also going through your own transition. Pia uko na zako. Sasa inawa uko na zao. But one of you is the parent. One of you is the authority. So one of you has to take the bullets. And it might mean just embracing them. It might mean not kujibizana. Don't go into this, you push back. There's a time I did that with my daughter last year, I think 2 years ago. And she called me out on something that was very, I could tell she was right. As a parents, we don't like feeling like we are wrong. She was right. I said, no, Dad. No, 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 no. And see, I trained her to be talking back to me this conversation, saying, no, Dad, you have to say so. This one, you're the one who's on the wrong. I was like, no, I'm the dad here. But I knew if I keep staying in this state of, I know I've done wrong and I'm not modeling it. I'm not modeling even how to say sorry. It took me about a day or two, I don't know, maybe 3, just thinking, Annie, I have to really humble myself to the state of saying sorry to my 12-year-old. But I did it. I had to pray for help and seek help and everything. And children are extremely forgiving. That's what I discovered. It doesn't take much. In fact, they really now hold you high in regard because we've now taught them how to respond. Because every time how you respond, they're actually learning from you. So let me pause here. And I don't know how, Wendy, you want to run this and get to hear some of the questions, or if some that I have not answered, maybe you can help me pick them out and I can give them an attempt. But in summary, what I'm saying is our preteens and our teenagers breathe the air of affirmation. And they breathe an air from affirmation from an authority, because you are the authority in their lives. You don't want them to get it from elsewhere, that affirmation. Then the other component is the identity. Identity is formed by the belief system. I had mentioned belief and behavior. So hopefully you have a system of beliefs, a set of beliefs and values that you're always anchoring them on, so that the choices they make are based on, this is what we believe as Kitetos, as Waidakas, as Ogutus, as Otienos, as Muitas. This is what we breathe. This is our belief system. And therefore we behave it this way, and even at home, everybody knows. Then it is easy to call them to now the responsibilities. The responsibilities, I have not mentioned much of it, but children also become very, very responsible when you throw challenges at them. So make sure they're doing chores at home. People don't like the word chores anymore. But responsibilities at home, whether it's washing dishes, cleaning the house, that actually builds their confidence also, because they feel like they're being trusted to do something. Some of you go shopping. Allow them to do the shopping of the house, or to just do a bit of it. They feel this is, oh, I belong. I have a place. I have a role to play. So that they are actually participating in the life of the family. So let me pause there, Wendy. We have a couple of minutes, given the time that you had shared. I'm open to questions, whether on the chat or just unmute and share.
Great, thank you so much. Now we know about the air. I remember when you suggested that, I thought, okay, that's a funny, it's a funny title. But yes, in terms of what you're talking about, when there's meltdown and there's conflict, and we are feeling like, huyu mtoto, Lord help me, mtu anishikilie. We have to pause, and remember, we are the parent. They are not the parent. They are not the adult. Well, if we are talking about a child, they are not an adult. They're not a little adult, because sometimes we expect them to know. Our expectations are also unrealistic about what they should know and how they should behave. And I think that responds to Josiah. Josiah was saying one of the things he would like to do is be more patient. And I think when you take that pause and remind yourself, this is a child. I am a grown-up. How can I help them to navigate this? How can I help them when they also get in situations like this, when they feel like they want to pull their hair out? How can I be patient and show self-control? It comes from a lot of practice and a lot of pausing, because many times when we are quick to speak, we are also quick to say hurtful things to other people, including our children. So I think that answers that. You answered a lot of the questions that came up on media use, video games, media content. You answered that very directly. I think you also answered a bit about the peer pressure because of affirmation. I feel that if we work on the affirmation and strengthening or cementing their identity, then they will be less inclined towards the pressure from their peers. But if you have anything specific you'd like to say about that, there were, I think, 2 or 3 who had inquired how to help guide them against negative peer pressure.
Yeah. Negative peer pressure is towards the attachment. When they're getting affirmation from their peers, they will tend to incline towards their peers. They might even do things that they don't like, just to be accepted and to feel a sense of belonging. The biggest thing that the world seems to be offering, and I might even venture a bit into even the world of sexuality, because now it has become many colors, as we know. It is when you are being offered something that looks like belonging, acceptance. I'm accepted for who I am. When that begins to happen, it's very easy for anyone to woo your child to a different direction, that peer. So, which means you have to win the battle on the balance, that you're the one who is actually affirming them more. Now, I am completely cognizant of the fact that because you're an adult, you see a lot of mistakes. We see a lot of mistakes. I personally can be quite critical, where I'm demanding more than what the child is able to. And so I've not trained myself to observe the good things they're doing, to just affirm them and say, you know what? I noticed when you spoke kindly to your sister. That was really good. I noticed when you just by yourself decided to make your bed. And that was really good. Oh, I noticed you just cleaned up after everybody else when our guests came. Oh, that was really good. So you have to really be out looking for stuff to affirm somebody. And this works across the board, by the way, for those guys who have teams. It's the same thing for your staff, the same thing. So peer pressure, you have to replace it with a lot of affirmation and building a good friendship and communication. I can tie this up to how do you discipline teenagers, because
Please ask that. You can go ahead.
We normally say from around 0 to 9, where I come from with all the tools and my belief system, it is okay to use kiboko up to age 9. 9, the cognitive, they grow. Anyone who pushes back on kiboko, most likely they were given kiboko way into their teenage and they became bitter. And so that's not the time to do kiboko. What you do with teenagers is withdrawing privileges. Once you've observed them and you know very well they really love maybe the screen at this time, or they love talking to their friends, or they love going to do this, or when I buy them this, they really like it. Then you can begin saying, now, if you don't do this, it's a question of time consequence, and action. So you do this, you get this consequence. And don't confuse forgiveness for consequence. Forgiveness, you can forgive the child and still have them go through their consequence. So make sure that the consequence is very clear. And mostly it's the things they love. One of the things that one of my daughters loves is just friends, having to hang out with friends. So to tell them, but they, for the thing that you did, you cannot actually meet your friends or talk to them for the next 2 weeks or for the next 1 month. I mean, she can do anything just to get that. But it's because we know her. For you, you have to study yours and get to know what is it that they love. But what we do sometimes as parents, we give false promises. As parents, we are supposed to mirror, God is a promise keeper. Our Father in heaven is a promise keeper. When He tells you something, He actually follows through. So sometimes we say, if you do that, I will, do this. And then you actually don't follow through. The child is very intelligent. They'll just know, that one, you just talk, but you really don't come through. But if you follow through, the children really get to respect because they know that you will follow through with your word. So keep promises, don't give empty threats. Don't give empty threats like I'll throw you out of the house. That one,
I'll leave you in the supermarket. Wewe,
I'll
takwacha.
leave you at the supermarket. Those ones
They know you can't go home without them.
can't execute that. So
Yeah.
you have to think a bit and decide this is what I'm going to do, and you actually follow through with it. And you'll see tantrums, they'll hit the roof, but next time they know, no. That emotional pain was a bit much. I don't think I want to go back into that.
All right, thank you. So if I can chime in a bit on the discipline, I mean, you mentioned that we should be looking out, observing opportunities or looking at our children, catching them doing good things, positive things, so that we can affirm them. I think many times we are police, always looking for negative things with other people around us. So please let us remember to always look out for something positive. And when you see that something positive, say it as soon as possible. Make that observation as soon as possible and not pass out the opportunity to affirm. The other thing that you have mentioned is that it's important to be consistent and to follow through. And I'd also like to chime in that sometimes what we call natural consequences are also important ways to teach our children. I remember there was once we were going out somewhere for lunch and I told my girls to dress up. And I always tell them, think about the weather, look outside, see what the weather is, think about what we are going to do, and then you dress appropriately. So my daughter was insisting she really wanted a certain pair of shoes. I told her, those shoes, it's rained, it's very muddy. No, 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 no. These are the ones I want. So I said, okay. And I made sure not to carry an extra pair. So we went, and then she's running around and her feet are getting wet and muddy. And she says, Mommy, my shoes are so uncomfortable. Where's the other pair of shoes? I said, the other pair of shoes are at home because you didn't want to carry them. These are the ones you wanted. So now I know next time we're going out anywhere, she will make a better decision about shoes because she experienced the consequences of that. Carry a jacket. It's not cold. I'm okay. When they feel cold, next time, you will not need to tell them to carry a jacket. So depending also on the situation, sometimes letting our children learn from natural consequences teaches them so much better than our lecture, because we also tend to be lecturers when it comes to our children as opposed to coaches, like you pointed out. The other question that perhaps we can answer before we go to more added in the chat is there's someone who was concerned that in the case of a single parent, are there identity issues that may result from a parent missing, maybe a parent being absent from that? Would you like to make a comment on it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thanks for sharing that. So the way we are designed, by design, input from both an older male father figure, mother figure, or caregiver really builds us to become whole. Now, I do not know the state of your faith, but we have examples actually when you read through the texts that there's a way you need to look for another male affirming figure who could be a teacher or a grandfather or an uncle who then forms a relationship, especially if it's a son, because generally sons tend to sort of triangulate with a male figure in terms of following in the steps of their behavior. And so if you are in a community, even if the father is not there, it doesn't really matter as long as you're intentional in building a community around your son that they're able to build an affirming relationship with. That's what I would say. We see that in, if you know the narrative of Paul and Timothy in the Bible, Paul had more, Timothy seemed to have a Greek father who was not Jewish, and they're maybe a bit absent. And Paul noted that I saw the faith of your grandmother and your mother play through in you, which means you actually have a lot of responsibility as a mom to transmit your values to your child. And then the community members who you can approach, maybe it's a coach, a sports coach, and just tell them, hey, just help me answer some of these questions. And some of them could even be around their sexuality, or just as they're growing, they need to be affirmed in this and that. Just be intentional. And what I think when you partner with God, what he does, he also brings a Paul into the life of your son so that they are able to have somebody who becomes a mentor. And therefore, I've had people, some of them are very good friends of mine, who've been mentored by the grandfathers. And it worked perfectly because that was the father figure they had. And so it is important to have both the input of both in terms of just seeing both sides, because you're also preparing them to know how to relate later, even in their married life. You need to have both examples of saying, okay, this is how a man behaves, and this is how a man treats a woman, or a woman responds to a man. And so you need both. But there's a little bit of work there to do in terms of building the community around your
Yes.
child.
Oh, thank you, Steve. That's one of the things we covered last, in our last webinar, that it takes a village to raise a child. So think about who are the people you need in your village. And if you are a single parent, then you even need a more intentional, bigger village to fill in the holes of the absent parent, so to speak. I can see David is saying he chose peace. They have an 11-year-old who refuses to wear clothes they buy, and the ones they select for him, once they left him to decide for himself, they are now at peace. It is at 11. Those are challenges I was facing from age 4. This is what I want to wear. Yes, so those are some of the ways that we can help build independence for them, giving them choice. Because remember, when we are that season where we are doing a lot of command, then they don't feel like they're putting in much input, that we're not caring about their opinions. So this is one of those areas where we can give them the leeway to make their own decision. When you're buying clothes, you can have them participate in choosing what they would like to wear with guidelines. When it comes to dressing, let them choose what they want to wear, because then they're also exercising their freedom and independence. And like we said, sometimes if they have the natural consequences, they will also change for that benefit. All right. Another one that you did not deal with is that wonderful question about when to talk about sex. And I know that you have tackled this with your own children in your other sessions. So you can briefly say, what's the right age? This one was talking about, was it an 11-year-old? When do we talk about sex?
So I like saying, if your child is 6, they've gone to school and they've never asked you about what is sex, or some form of that question coming in a different form, then be sure they're asking somebody else. They begin noticing sexuality from as early as even 3 years, 4, 5. They begin having language of, girlfriend, boyfriend. mostly modeled from screens. The scenes that they see, even cartoons now, are really feeding narratives of boyfriend, girlfriend, and all that. And so they already have the idea. You find a 6-year-old, 5-year-old already saying, my boyfriend is so and so, my girlfriend is so and so. And they'll sometimes enter into that conversation. If you have an older child, maybe 9, 10, they'll sometimes expose the younger one a lot more. Or if they go to school, they find all these kids. So the earliest, I like separating it into two. 0 to 5, they're about 6. This is just textbook. It will not it will not flow like that if they have siblings. They'll be exposed earlier if they have older siblings or older cousins. But 0 to 5, what you want to begin answering is questions of the anatomy. Like, these are my private parts. No one should see, just to protect them from being abused. No one should touch except dad or mom when they're washing me. And they need to understand this is, whether you decide to call it penis or vagina or susu. I give latitude to parents. I know you're struggling because of where you came from, your culture. It's fine. As long as they're able to say, this one is for the girl, this one's for the boy. And they're able to tell, I'm a boy, I'm a girl. That's what you're dealing with, 0 to 5. That builds a conversation into sex, which you can build it in many ways. I have an article I have written, this on the website. You can go and check it out. But when I was asked that question, my wife and I, it took us a while before we answered it. But finally, God was gracious. I prepared myself. Then one time we were reading through the Old Testament, and there was a place saying the virgin daughters of Jerusalem. And I taught them to ask any word that they've not understood. And they asked, what is virgin? I said, it's a girl who's never had sex. And I could see my older girl, 6, she was sheepish. She's like, oh, she's ashamed. I'm wondering, where did you get this shame from? 6. But my friend I have said, yeah, I know what is sex. I know what is sex. It's when you love each other so much. And then you kiss, then you sit on the bed, and then you kiss again. Then you sit, yeah, see, I know what is sex. I know. And I was there. First, the good thing is I was listening to how much they know before I answer. And so, again, that O alpha, ask, listen, engage them, be open. But in this conversation of sex, the biggest person to deal with is not the child, it is yourself. Because we have grown in a culture that is very modest and very guarded around this subject. So, granted, don't beat yourself if you're struggling. It's because we're just not given that software. It was never passed down to us. Some very few parents talked about sex in our generation. So begin training yourself to be comfortable around sex. The best way I have found to talk about it is to anchor it on the maker of our bodies. Just so you know, God created us to function like this. So if, for example, it's a boy and preteen or girl, the changes are happening, you can say, actually, your body is behaving perfectly because that is how it was designed to function. If you anchor it on the maker of the designer of our bodies, it becomes an easier conversation. Sometimes you can use animals. There's a parent who told me he never had to really think too much because he grew up around animals. You'd see goats and they'd even help Zalisha these goats. And so in some ways they could see when the animals are mating, the dogs. So one time when my neighbor's dogs were mating, it was my perfect opportunity to call my daughters on the window and tell them, now look, that the dog is not killing the other one. But what is happening is use biology and say they're transferring the seed, the male seed, to the female, parts, and then in the ovaries, and I explained. And so you can also use biology to explain what sex is. But again, you have to just gauge where the child is at and how much they know. But if they have screens, and those screens have Wi-Fi, and if they go to school, be sure they know everything. By the time they are 9, 10, wameona karibu kila kitu hata zaidi ya wewe. And so you are the one who is behind. So the biggest catch up is us as parents, and I'm happy to, run a session of this to go deeper in this.
Yeah, that's a whole session in itself. Thank you for answering that. Our time is coming to a close. I'd like to say that I think that some of the other questions that have been asked, if we really reflect on the O alpha cycle that you shared with us, it can address issues of challenging authority, lack sense of direction. I think a lot of these through observation and remembering that adolescence is a time that comes with a lot of changes physically, emotionally, and all of that. As we observe these changes and we comment about them, have conversations, not confrontations, then I think it will help us get through these challenging situations that have been cited. There's one here in the chat I'd like you to respond to finally before we close. Someone says, Susan says, one question you will be asked today: why should I make my bed? And I am the one who will sleep on it. By the way, why should you make your bed? So do you make your bed, Steve? We can start from there.
I look at the
Do you make your
question.
bed, and why do you make it? Why should anyone make it if they are coming back to sleep in it? Kazi ya kitanda ni kulaliwa.
Yeah, it's a very good question. One, why should you make your bed? For children, don't look at making your bed, washing dishes, clearing the table as just that task. Think of it as a self-management life skill. It actually transfers. There's this book Kenyans really love, The Atomic Habits. One of the things they talk about is when you actually start your day and you tidy up your place or where you're sleeping and even the place that you are operating from, there's something it does to your psyche as well in terms of remaining orderly. When we teach Kaizen, the continuous improvement, again, it is the same thing. Kaizen says before you go to sleep, arrange your desk well, finish, and it's just small things, but the way they order your brain says, oh, we are so well ordered, we now want to approach life in an orderly manner. So think of it as a life skill training as opposed to a chore of just to be done. And then be convicted about what you're asking your child and have a good reason. If you don't have a good reason, then likely you will not enforce it because even you're not convinced. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, and because if you have a child, not just one, not just any, not just a specific kind, all children will ask you why. Why should I do it? Why does it matter? Why? And it's in that why where you can help solidify things that really matter. So, like Steve, you say, think about what's the why. Nancy, your hand is up. Would you like to say something? Nancy Kimile, your hand is up. Would you like to unmute and say something?
Sorry, by mistake. Kindly.
Oh, okay.
But
No
I'm
problem. You
following.
can put it down so it doesn't get tired. All right. So we have some parenting resources for you on our website. If you go to www.nakada.go.ke, you will be able to access under the Info Hub, you'll be able to access some booklets that are for different ages. We have the Smart Kids from age 6 to 8, the Cool Kids from 9 to 12. We have the Truth About Alcohol and Drugs from 13 to 15. We also have the one for 16 to 18. And we have a parent's guide to alcohol and drug use prevention. And you will find that also part of that content is some of what we are going through here in terms of positive parenting. Why is Nakada talking about positive parenting is a question we get a lot. And we have seen research has shown that when we adopt positive parenting skills, then it helps to reduce the risk of children and teens using drugs and also suffering from other mental illnesses. So some of the things we talk about in positive parenting is about communication, which we have even covered in today's session, as we talked about observing and speaking and conversing and giving feedback. Also monitoring and supervision of children's activities. And Steve mentioned how to do that. If they are looking at screens, monitor, what is it that they are looking at on those screens? What are they learning? What are they seeing? What are they hearing? So that we can supervise what it is that they are doing. Also, family bonding is very essential. Spending at least 10 minutes every day with each child makes a huge difference in terms of establishing that bond. And remember, when we spend time is also when we are able to observe and affirm. And the fourth area that is really key in positive parenting is issues of positive discipline and setting boundaries. How can we help to set boundaries? How can we clearly explain what is expected behavior? Because sometimes we are punishing and we were not even clear on what is expected. Yeah, so let's be clear and consistent in what we expect in terms of behavior and also consequences of those behavior. So like I said, positive parenting is linked to outcomes, positive outcomes in terms of decreased drug use, decreased depression and aggression, increased attainment when they're at school, and also their social competence is greatly increased. So we believe and we have seen that positive parenting can make a change, and we will continue to have these webinars, and we hope that you'll be able to join us. So lastly, knowledge doesn't change the world, only action does. So what one thing can you start or stop doing that will improve that will improve your parenting today, as we've talked about in terms of air. Sorry for that typo. There are already people who have been typing their takeaways for today. We have those who are talking about those 4 seasons for parenting as being very powerful lessons for them today, and hoping that they'll be able to embrace more of the coaching. I've seen several comments in that line. Also others just thanking you for all the insights that you have been able to share today. All right, any other things that you would like to change? We have been running this live on YouTube, and there are 2 comments there. We have Joyce Wanjiko who was saying, wow, very informative piece or session. We have Andrew who says, great conversation, positive parenting lessons and tips on top notch. All right, so please, before you leave with 1 point of action. What would you like to do? And as you type that in the chat, what action, one thing that you can do, or start or stop? Because sometimes change is about stopping, not just the starting, and learning, so that we have space to learn something new. Please type in the chat. And as you do that, I'd like to recognize my director who is in the house, Dr. Yvonne Orlando. I'd like you to just salimia watu and say a few things as we wind up today's session. Karibu, director.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Steve Kiteto. That was very, very insightful and very beautiful. I was also wondering what air is. Until today, I learned there's the aspect of affirmation. You know, these things we take for granted, but they make a lot of difference. And I like the statement that you said, someone feeling proud to belong, and actually used your name and Wendy's surname. You know, someone can proudly say, no, us, we are the Orlandos, we are the. I loved that very much. Thank you so much. I hope everyone has also learned like me. The aspect of identity is key, and actually the responsibility. And as you're sharing about children wanting, to wear their clothes, or you telling the child, do this now. And they're like, no, 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 wait, I'm finishing my game. And I was like, okay, at least he knows after this, I will still do. So there's the aspect of responsibility. Thank you. That was very beautiful. And even from the comments, I can see everybody seems to have learned. And even learning as people are writing some of their comments. We look forward to working with you some more. And to all the participants, we are now at 71. I saw at some point we're even more. Please keep joining us. Please keep learning together with us and sharing your feedback with us. Go to the website. The material is there and it is free of charge for you to download. Wendy, asante sana kwa hiyo kazi mzuri. Please keep the webinar series coming up. And during the National Prevention Week, usipoteze namba ya Bwana Kitoto. We will need him then. Asante sana, and back to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Director, for being here and learning along with us and supporting the work that we are doing. I'll just finally finish by reading some more comments here. Thank you for the insightful conversation. Mary says she'll give her children more room for expression and not be so commanding. Stephen says, affirm my children more. Mary, thank you for the great job and knowledge shared. Lillian, being the parent in the relationship, that is the role that she's going to keep to, especially when things are going to the fan, hitting the fan. Great lessons. We'll start affirming my kids. That's what Mary says. Atieno says, operationalize air, even though they are older. Yes, I don't think we are ever too old to be affirmed. Even we love to be affirmed, to hear the things that others are observing about us, the positive things. And we always, no matter how old we are, want to belong. Faustine says, bonding more. Roberta has picked up the O alpha method. Leniti talks about, kindly display the air slide. Wololo. Hiyo imepita. You can find this on YouTube after, and I'll also send an email out with just a little summary and a link to the resources that are offered by Badili. Nancy also says that it is quite insightful. Lydia says, I am not yet a parent, but I have gained a lot from this session. I now have the right tools for me to raise a healthy child in the future. Thank you. Wonderful, Lydia. I mean, some parents listen to these things and they think, oh, if only I had learned this years ago. So it's great that you're investing in your future and in your child's future. May the Lord grant you a child in due time. Jane Mwangi says, engaging and the affirmations is her takeaway. Crispin says, powerful indeed. Thank you. I missed the air bit. Kindly briefly display. Air is like everything in this one. A for affirmation, I for identity, and R for responsibilities. That is the display that you get. And Liz says, I have learned that you build on truth to bear good fruit. All right, thank you for this session. Very informative. On that note, we close for the day. Steve, any parting words you would like to share with those who have joined us today?
All right, I think I've said everything, but I will leave you with just remember you're the authority, and just control yourself, and then they are learning from you. So they'll push buttons. But if you remain calm, and then you affirm them, build their identity, give them responsibilities, we should end up with very well-raised children, God willing.
All right, great. So don't seek perfection, only progress. We can only become better. Nobody is perfect but God. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we hope that you found this session valuable. I'll be sending you a survey shortly. Kindly, please, we'd like to hear from you how we can improve and the things that you enjoyed. Otherwise, may the Lord bless you and continue well in your parenting journey. All right. Kwaherini.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.